Patch 1.4 notes, Season of Destiny. We got the very first look at this. It literally just came out. We're reading the Taiwanese. I don't know if it's Taiwanese or whatever, but the Thai notes from somebody in chat. Thank you. I'm gonna skip this stuff because it's not relevant right now. Masters LP update will be a thing soon. Darius is the first buff, 5 to 6 health at level 2, so level 1 does not change. Level 2, good change though. Definitely happy about this. Not super impactful, but it is big enough to talk about to say that it's good. Next up, Anivia, 7 cost to 6, good change, decent buff, kind of what the card needs, and helps a lot in the context of playing Anivia with Shadow Isles because you can play Rekindler on 7 now after Anivia on 6. Big deal. Braum going to 4, big deal. He gets buffed to a 1/5 with 4 cost. Basically, the big thing is that when he survives damage, he gets a Poro right away. So it's a pretty massive change for like the Vlad Braum decks because now, I mean, Braum is like a 3-drop would kind of, just kind of struggle to really fit in the list because you do have a lot of other really strong 3-cost units in the Vlad Braum decks that you would play. We've actually seen Vlad stuff not really come down with Braum because of that, I find. It's just because, you get contested by, let's get the Shadow Isles out of there. Basically by a couple key ones. So number 1, it's not the Mighty Poro. Tavern Keeper is a big one. But the Ember Maiden and the Curator are basically the 2 big contesting ones for you when you're playing that type of a deck. And now that Braum's going forward, really your only contest in the 4-drop slot is going to just be the Awakener, which already isn't the most nutty card in the deck. So it makes it a lot more playable there, and I mean, just in general, it's a really big buff to make him a 4-mana 1/5, because 1, he has attack right away, and 2, whenever he survives damage, he's getting a Mighty Poro right away. So really huge buff to unleveled up Braum, and I mean, post-level up, Braum gets another attack. So, I mean, he's a 2/6 base stats, so really big buff, and he will be playable now. Next up, Death Rocket buff, 2 cast to 1, decent change, not terrible. It's a small buff, but, one that's good. Then now it changes to followers, so that looks like there's going to be no Sejuani nerf then, if that's the case. So that's important to note, and no Heimer change either. Pretty big to take note of that. Genevieve Elmhart from a 4/4 to a 5/5. Good change, not much to say. She's definitely overshadowed by Cithria the Blold, so this just gives you more options if you're trying to play for like scout stuff with like an MF deck, something like that. If you want to jam stuff with her, then you get the scout attacks off, and just makes Genevieve a little bit better. Not too much to say about these stat buffs. It's just a solid buff. It's good. She's an underplayed card, deserves it. Next up, Unyielding goes from burst to fast. Definitely a good change. That was one of the ones we were talking about. It's either that or making the burst spell cost like 9 or 10 mana. But I think this is fine. It means that you can Vengeance units in response, for example. So it just means that this card kind of has some counterplay instead of just being absolutely broken and unfun to play into. So really good change, one that the community is definitely going to be happy about, and one that I'm pretty happy about too. So overall, good change. Basilisk Rider, a 5/2 to a 5/3. Not a really big constructed change. It could be relevant in the future. A couple sets down the line if Noxus has a very strong core of cards. Not the case right now though. This is a big change for just going to be Expeditions though. So huge change for that because Basilisk Rider is actually a good card Expeditions. Yeah, that's about it. Captain Ferron, a mana 8/8. When he's summoned, create 3 Decimates from change all cards in hand to Decimates. This is the change for me so far that is probably the biggest one actually. Just because I think that Ferron is actually a really good card, and now he's going to fit in a lot of these like mid-rangey, even like super fast decks that will want to run him. I'll probably honestly even try playing him in like a Swain deck. Just because he's such a strong early game card. Sorry, not early game. He's such a strong finisher, my bad. Because you got to keep your hand now, and he just creates 3 Decimates, which is literally just 12 damage, and he's an 8/8 with Overwhelm. So even if you're playing like a really slow deck, like for us, what we played today, for example, we went like 11-1 with a deck similar to what I got Masters with, like a Swain control list with like Elise. You can literally just run Captain Ferron in here, and he's actually like legitimately a very powerful finisher and just a strong card for you too. If you want, right? If you feel like 3 Leviathans is not enough. But even in aggressive decks, because now you got to keep all the cards in your hand, this is still very good to run. So we will see him see play, and this is just an absolutely obscenely massive buff. Yeah, and it's going to be one that's going to be more apparent when you play with it, because I mean it sounds decent, but it's going to be night and day from pre-buff Ferron to buff Ferron for sure. Next up, Aurora Porelius. This is not what this card needed. It costing 1 less is good, but the problem is, you have to play everything after you cast the Aurora Porelius in a Poro deck already. So you're going to get 2 Poros in your hand and 2 Poro snacks in hand. That's 8 mana to spend on things after you already play a 6 mana burst spell. So You really need to either have Aurora Porelius give you 2 Poro snacks and summon 2 random Poros, or give you 2 random Poros in your hand and cast 2 Poro snacks. So it won't be playable basically until that happens. I mean, you'd still probably run this in like a Poro deck, but it's just not good. That's it, really. Poro Herder got changed, basically just halved everything. It's instead of a 4 mana 3/4, it's now a 2 mana 2/3 that will draw 1 Poro if you have a Poro ally instead of 2. Definitely a good change, and you know, they talk about this one being coupled with Braum because I mean it's too hard to play both the 4 cost units in the same slot, so making this a 2 mana card makes more sense. I agree with that. I think in general this is just a little bit of a pretty big buff for this card. I think if 2 mana 2/3 is definitely better than a 4 mana 3/4. Obviously you don't draw 2 Poros, but I mean the fact that you still draw 1 and have another 2 drop in the list is really powerful. So big fan of it, think it's good. We'll revisit the Poro stuff in a bit and we'll jam that when we do. She Who Wanders, this card's basically just going back to being powerful with the regen added to it as well. If you guys have played in closed or open beta, you'll know how powerful She Who Wanders was you know, with War Mother's Call, a deck that we actually revisited a couple days ago. You know, one of the strongest cards in the game, and I mean in this list was you know, basically your top end, even being bigger than Tryndamere, and it has that crazy like obliterate effect in a similar fashion to what Maokai kind of does. But I mean, this only hits followers with 4 less power in play in hand instead of the whole deck. So still a really good card, and you know, a buff that will make it better. Not insane or top tier, but it is a really good buff, and you know, will make me want to revisit it in the War Mother's Call deck with the Anivia buff. Want to revisit both of those things. So I'm excited about it. Good change. The Who Endure got nerfed to cost 7. That's fine. Not a huge change. I would have preferred other things in the deck got nerfed, but you know, 6 to 7's fair change. Yeah, not super crazy. I mean, you're still going to play it for 7. It's still a nutty card, but a little bit less good. Ren Shadowblade, that's a rework. So instead of being an 8 mana 4/4, when your opponent summons a follower, give it Ephemeral. Now you're going to have quick attack and strike, create a Shadow Fiend in hand. Super good in like the Hackroom decks, because then you have more Deathmark targets with Shadow Fiends. So I think it's really cool for that, and just a good rework in general. I think that you know, they kind of took a card that was quite literally unplayable. I really don't think that there's ever been a deck where you're just like, you know what? To cap my deck off with, I really need a Ren Shadowblade. That's exactly what I need my deck to make it better. To a card that now kind of has a home in those kind of Deathmark decks, I think. So definitely a decent change. Next up, Jay Madara goes from a 8 mana 6/6 to a 6 mana 4/4. Loses elusive, but gains the text when this card is a target and survives draw 1. So I mean, you can debate whether or not this is a buff or a nerf, and honestly I'm really not too sure, because the elusive tag is really big, and the fact that this has to survive now to draw makes it difficult. But I guess the idea is you would play this in like a list that runs the Vi card Vault Breaker, and you would just have a decent draw engine. But I'm having a hard time kind of coming up with exactly how you would really make that work. But, you know, cool change. It looks kind of like a shitty Gadgetzan Auctioneer, but that's still not terrible. Yeah, I'm honestly not sure if this makes it more playable or not. We'll see. Because, I mean, even like an elusive 8 mana 6/6 with that effect is still strong, but it's basically just the fact that it elusives elusive that makes it a lot worse, in my opinion. We'll see that. Curse Keeper getting nerfed, the Escaped Abomination from it. Obviously, going from a 4/4 to a 4/3. That was one of the other things we were talking about to nerf the Who Endure. I think really the Escaped Abomination is one of the reasons why the deck is so good. If you look at it, I can pull it up here. I guess I can just go over the cards. So really, like the core reason why the Who Endure deck does so well early game and can kind of transition that to a later game is because they play Curse Keeper and have so many good ways to activate it. With you know, whether that's like the Butcher or just the Caretaker being the main two, I think. Just getting that 4/4 out, and obviously getting the other units as well is really insane. It kind of just makes it so like the Curse Keeper doesn't have a downside. So, you know, making this a 4/3 is still going to allow this deck to be strong. It's just going to kind of tone it down a little bit and allow you to have, you know, your 3 attack units like Frenzied Skitter, for example, or like Arachnoid Horror block it now. Which to me makes it feel a lot better, because the difference between 4 health and 3 health, and then 3 health and 2 and 1 in this game is massive. So, you know, kind of moving that down a little bit health wise is going to make it a lot easier to deal with and a lot more fair, I guess, is what it'll feel like playing as it. Next up is the Harrowing, 10 mana to 9. Decent slight buff. You know, I've only played this card really with Darius in like the Darius Harrowing deck that I played that one time, but you know, good buff. I mean, it'll make it more playable for sure. It's another one of those small ones that might just make the cards really good. 10 to 9 is a lot less relevant, I guess, than like 5 to 4 though, for example. So it's a really small one. That's still a buff for sure, and one that is deserved. Next up, the Dredgers are being nerfed from a 1 mana 2/1 to 1 mana 1/1. Decent nerf to deep. It's not big though. It's very, very small. Again, like the toss is what's relevant. Yeah, that's about it. So I mean, it's a decent change, slight nerf. Deep is a strong deck, so it's deserved. It's fair. Next up, Mind-Meld going from an 8 mana spell to a 7 mana spell. One of those slight buffs, again, very similar to the Harrowing that these type of big slow spells kind of deserve. Mind-Meld is a card that I think could be like kind of sleeper. Obviously gets beat by a lot of stuff, whether that's removal on the units before they get buffed or, you know, just like a deny. But I think that it is a card that's probably a lot better than people give it credit for. And one that I was actually looking at kind of spending some time playing. So that's decent that they're doing that. I think it's a good change. It's again a small buff. We're not seeing too many big ones, to be honest. A lot of small nerfs and buffs. The reworks are really big, but you know, nerf slash buff wise, I mean, the only one that really stands out as being super significant is like Ferran to me so far. Anivia obviously being pretty big too. Petty Officer to 2 health from 1. That's a pretty big change. Petty Officer is a decent card. I like to play it a little bit, so it's going to make it go from being played a little bit to probably being played a lot. Is that it for nerfs and buffs? So I guess we can maybe, before we go to the mechanic rework, talk about what cards that we didn't see changed here that maybe should have been changed. Is there even one nerf to Heimer here? There is no nerfs to Heimer, if I believe. So Vi and Heimer should be by far the best deck in the game then. The Heimerdinger is still probably like tier 1 as well. Like really, these changes aren't that big. They're small, but I guess it's like the Abomination one that matters the most. But like Atrocity is still fast, so that's a thing. What did I just add that I didn't want to add? Let's just do that, I guess, and get out. Oh, I can just take discard, I guess. So we look at cards, things that did not get changed that maybe should have got changed. Things that I wanted to see changed that did not get changed. Sejuani didn't get nerfed, which to me is kind of nuts. She's clearly really strong. And same with the Heimer, right? Like these two are, in my opinion, the 2 best champions in the game. We went over like a, I guess not like an actual tier list, but I kind of rated the champions earlier today, and this was basically it. You know, I worried about, I guess, S, A, and B, left to right is the strongest in my opinion. You know, the lower down you go, the less it really matters. So from this, Braum got a buff, which is good, and Anivia got a buff. That's good as well. Darius also got a small buff. I believe that's it for champions, though, so they really didn't touch on too much here. Yeah. So they didn't really nerf champions all that much as well, and Braum got a rework, which will push him up for sure to make him a lot more viable. But other than that, champions really didn't get touched, which is kind of crazy. I feel like Sej and Heimer definitely needed some nerfs. And if you look at the cards, I mean, it's a lot of small buffs and not very many nerfs. They hit Heimerdinger a little bit, so that list obviously got nerfed by that, and then the Escaped Abomination change. They nerfed a lot of the Demacia stuff with Spirit, with that going from burst to fast. That's a big nerf. But no touches for the Heimer deck, which is kind of insane. That's really, really confusing. So I believe what they're doing with this rework here as well is that they're going to make it so basically instead of plundering from the, sorry, not plundering, but instead of yoinking from the top of the deck, you're going to be nabbing cards as a keyword they're using. Could be different because we're reading the Thai notes and it's translated from Thai. But basically what they're doing to Black Market Merchant, Pilfer Goods, and Yordle Grifter is they're making them nab, which means you draw from the bottom of the deck instead of the top. So you're not going to steal like Freljord's buff cards or their 1 mana 5/5 Yetis, which is good. And Black Market Merchant is going down from a 2 mana 2/2 to a 2 mana 2/1. So I'd say that because of the market nerf and the fact that it's like nab now from the bottom of the deck is pretty big. I definitely see that's a significant nerf. I don't know if it's enough to like make these completely terrible though. Like I feel like this package is still gonna be playable. Again, it's like a 2 mana 2/1. Like this just dies to Vile Feast, which sucks. But the Pilfer Goods is a burst spell, so you just play that after anyways before your opponent kills your merchant, so you don't really care. Combo's still really good. But you know, it's nice in the context of Freljord not getting screwed over by it. That's about it for that change. So not super significant, and these cards really did not get nerfed heavily at all, I would say. Things that are missing that we talked about, I would have almost liked to see an Atrocity nerf potentially. That would have been one of the decent cards to nerf, and I think that another really big card that did not get touched was Heimerdinger and the cards that support him really. Flash of Brilliance not getting changed feels insane to me. Like the fact that Flash of Brilliance plus Heimer with the 3-cost turrets are still in the game the way that they are is a huge oversight in my opinion. I do think that like this really is a solid tier list for the current patch that we're on. I do think Heimer is the best champion in the game, with Sejuani being the second, very close. And I think it's ridiculous that nothing to do with you know, Heimer has been changed. It's actually just crazy. Like, there are absolutely zero nerfs to that deck. Like, you know, if you want to hit it in a very solid fashion that will just, you know, make it a little bit worse early on, all you do is you take like Solitary Monk and you make like Solitary Monk a 3/3 instead of a 4/3. I feel like the Monk really has no business being as powerful as she is. So I think that going down one attack would be a very solid kind of nerf to the deck. That's not massive, but one that could matter. And then you know, you can maybe change something like Twin Disciplines to like 4 mana if you want to do that, or to, you know, remove the I guess onslaught of like the elusive turrets, or you know, flash to being 4, for example, as well. Like, one of those changes would really help and just tone the deck down a little bit. As how it is in its current state is going to be way too strong still, and it will still be dominating the metagame. So it looks like it's either going to be beat Heimervi or play Heimervi, and I feel like what a lot of people have been doing, and one of the only lists of people have actually been climbing with on ladder right now into like the top 100 is with Heimervi, just because of how powerful it is. You know, I think that They Who Endure is a slightly weaker deck than it. I do believe that Heimervi is the best deck in the game, and I think that there's a lot of players higher up on ladder who have just been basically one-tricking this deck. And it's basically all they play, because there's not really a reason to do anything else. It's so powerful that you know, I think it's just absolutely insane that it did not find a nerf at all here. But I'll give you guys an example. Like, I literally picked this up after never playing Heimer and went 18-5 with it. Like, that wasn't a joke. You know, I don't bullshit on like the YouTube kind of thumbnails. If I like put 18-5 or 13-12, I actually do that with the deck. And I literally never played Heimer ever before in my life, other than like in an expedition once or twice. So, you know, it's kind of nuts that I could just pick it up and do that with it, but it's crazy, and this will definitely be the deck that still continues to dominate ladder, I'm sure, because these nerfs and buffs are like not very big, right? It's effectively going to be the same metagame that we've had. Like, the last round of nerfs were a lot larger and changed a lot more, in my opinion. Like, for this, we're basically going to have the exact same metagame, I think. You know, with Unyielding Spirit change, it's kind of a big deal. That's probably the most impactful one here. But other than that, I mean, none of these changes really feel like they're that crazy to me. And I'm not gonna lie, like, from my first impression, I'm honestly like kind of expecting more, or was expecting more, I guess. Oh, Leeson board, that's kind of cool. Oh, a Cat Guardian. That's kind of cute. And, oh, a Leeson card back. Okay, I'm gonna cop that. That's cute. I'm the Blind Monk. Let's go. And 3 new emotes. Oh, Cythria emote. Fizz, Cythria, and Vi. Cute. Ooh, a bundle. Okay, I'm gonna buy the bundle. That's what I'm gonna buy. I love Lee Sin in League of Legends. I play that a lot. Then some archetype stuff. Banning of bot accounts, cool. That's fine. So I do think that they really have missed the mark though on this balance patch. We're gonna have another month of effectively the same metagame, I think. I feel like a lot of the little buffs are really nice, but I think that they had to touch on a couple of really key cards to make the game feel fresh. Because I maybe not so much at like lower levels, because I feel like people don't really want to net deck Heimervi at lower levels, because it's not really like the easiest deck in the entire world to play. That being said, it's not really super crazy either to play it, right? But Heimervi is just going to be absolutely dominating the metagame. It's going to be just crazy how many people are going to continue playing the deck, because that's what a lot of people have been playing. And that's what they're continue playing, because it did not get touched at all. So personally, again, I would have liked to see a Sejuani nerf. I would have liked to see a Heimer nerf. And I feel like the craziest thing is we're just not seeing a Heimer nerf at all. For me, it's actually just really almost, I would say, unbelievable that we're really going through another patch where Heimer is just completely broken. But, you know, that's the way it goes, I guess. Can't say too much. So I guess on the next patch after, they'll fix them up, but other than that, is there anything they really missed desperately? They nerfed Yoink stuff a little bit, not by an amount that's too much. They only touched one card in Deep, which is just nerfing a 2/1 to a 1/1. Just kind of fine. I feel like Deep isn't really the deck that you need to just gut right away. And I think it's okay that they're not really nerfing stuff super fast, but in the case of things like Sejuani and like Heimervi, where the decks are clearly just a little bit stronger than everything else, it probably should be tuned a little bit. In my opinion, I think that this really will kind of make the game get a lot more stale for me, and probably a lot of the other people who do play a lot like at higher ranks. You know, I've been playing like a lot of fun stuff instead anyways, and I'll probably continue doing that, but I was really hoping I could grind for rank 1 in like a fresh metagame, and it really seems like it won't be that fresh. So if I do want to have to grind for rank 1, I either basically have to play Heimerdinger or find like a decent counter to it that I can have like at least a 55 matchup into it with, which kind of sucks. So overall, I'd honestly say I'm kind of disappointed by these patch notes, not gonna lie. I love the Lee Sin stuff, and I love the fact that they're buffing cards, but I really do think that they're missing the mark as far as balance goes. And again, it is nice that they're hitting like the They Who Wander stuff, or sorry, the They Who Endure deck a little bit. I think that's a good change, but missing the Heimerdinger really just does not leave a good taste in my mouth. And I feel like missing buffs on the Aurora Pirellius and just not really doing anything to the card kind of sucks too. This is one of the ones that really needed to be reworked. So I would say that this, just compared to the last balance patch, is honestly kind of terrible. We can maybe just compare them side by side for now, like, and see really what they did in 1.2, but I feel like they're really just missing the mark on this one. So buff Vlad, which is relevant. Karma nerf was good. Shen buff was good. Vi nerf was good. It feels like overall, just even looking at this, like a lot of their buffs and nerfs were just better, more impactful ones. So what buffs did I not think would be that good? I think that I said that Slotbot and Monkey Idol would be good. I wasn't as sold on Slotbot as Monkey Idol, but Monkey Idol is definitely really strong, and Slotbot's also strong. Longtooth didn't matter. Brute Awakening nerf mattered. We still played that as a 2-of in the Swain deck we played today. Rookie nerf was big. Meditation was a buff to Heimer. That's a good buff. I mean, this patch overall feels like it was a lot better than this one. Again, like, we haven't played on the patch, so maybe I'm completely wrong, but I feel like overall, like, the reworks they did with these cards were nice, but they're not like super impactful as a thing, right? Like, it just feels like it's kind of like a low impact patch, I guess. And I don't think that's really good. It's like a fresh season, right? Like, this is where they should change a lot of stuff. Anivia might soft counter Heimer now. You're not wrong, but the thing is, you still play like Will of Ionia in those decks, right? So the Anivia is not really that good because the Heimer decks still play like 3 Wills, right? If you look at the patch notes, Will of Ionia didn't get nerfed at all. This is still a 4-mana just fast spell. So like, I don't think that's really the case. This card just counters Anivia so heavily, it's ridiculous. You know, Concussive Plum as well if you want to run that, basically anything. So I think you're kind of correct about that. Like, the Anivia buff might do something to Heimer decks, but I don't think it's really the look because of how powerful Will of Ionia is. Anivia is going to suffer from the same fate that basically every other big champion does, is that Will of Ionia just makes it so your big champion does nothing. And then the Heimer player just gets a tempo gain and wins the game, which is literally how they just play basically every single pan out. So, I mean, it's like a good card into that, but I don't think Anivia going from 7 to 6 is really going to just fix everything, so. I'm not gonna lie, man. I think they made a couple of good changes, right? Like, I think the nerfs to the Endure are good. She Who Wanders buff is nice. Poro Hoarder's good. Veron is insane. Pirellius is really bad. Baskus Rider is not that relevant, but it's okay. And the reworks are decent, but I think that they dropped the ball in this one, man. I really don't think that they did what they needed to do to balance the metagame. I mean, like, let me know what you guys think, but for me, I feel like they really did not do that great of a job for 1.4. You know, again, it's like a lot of small buffs, some reworks to like 2 of the epic cards that are not very good. I guess Poro Hoarder reworked too. I mean, they like more than 2 because they reworked Veron as well. Maybe I'm just being too critical, I don't know. But it feels like, you know, the point of the balance patch is to kind of balance the game, right? You really want to balance what is overtuned and kind of fix things like that. So yes, they attack They Who Endure, which is nice. I mean, it's fine. Nerfing that kind of a deck is good because, I mean, clearly that was like one of the 2 most powerful decks in the game. But the fact that Heimer did not get touched at all is just, it kind of just ruins the patch for me, to be honest. Like, that's going to be really annoying to deal with for quite a bit longer. But, you know, the bright side for a lot of you guys, Heimerdinger won't be that popular outside of like super high ranks, so you won't have to worry about that for a while. But a lot of the sweaty kids are going to be grinding this nonstop, I think. Heimerdinger mirrors will be super popular on the Race to Masters, and that's going to be something you guys are going to see probably nonstop for the next month. Which kind of sucks. You're sort of right that they didn't do that much outside of Unyielding. I think that the Abomination and Dehundur nerfs are fine though, with the Abomination probably being the second most relevant. It likely goes from the amount of relevance you get from these nerfs or buffs, Unyielding is the most important, then Escaped Abomination is second, and those are probably like the two biggest ones. Dehundur from 6 to 7 matters, but not that much. And then the rest are kind of like not that relevant. The Anivia and Braum are actually like fairly relevant changes, but I don't think they're going to be enough to like really just make the metagame any different from what it is right now for the most part. More Anivia gamers though. And I mean, I could be completely wrong, right? Like we will have to lab stuff, but I feel like it's just not the look, man. Like I think that deck needed to get hit. Again, like you can also look at it this way, right? When we were looking at the last balance patch, I was saying nonstop how weak Freljord was, and I thought it was crazy that they didn't get buffed. And then, you know, I just had this discussion today that I actually think Freljord's like a relatively strong region. And I mean, maybe if you nerf Sejuani, you have to buff way too many things, and then, you know, Freljord just gets trash. So, yeah, I mean, that's all about all I have to say. I mean, they made it so the Yoink mechanic is less frustrating to deal with, calling a nab. Fixed some descriptions, added some new stuff to the shop, and they nerfed the Dehundur basically. And obviously they nerfed all the decks that use Unyielding Spirit as well, which is pretty big. Couple buffs. Overall, again, in my opinion, I think that they did not do that insane of a job though, because it's really not that great of a balance update. I think it's a decent patch. Like they try to add a lot of new things that were cool, and you know, hit some cards that are like less played and trying to make them playable is cool, but if you have like a tier S deck like Heimerdinger, you probably need to nerf that a little bit. Because I don't think that like the buffs that they've done here, the nerfs are going to be enough of a metagame correction to make it so that Heimer's just like bad now. Or like toned down a little bit. Because it doesn't really seem like any of these cards are going to help that be toned down. So, you know, if anything, like the nerfs to like the Escaped Abomination makes it even easier for them to win, because Dehundur could actually beat the Heimerdinger stuff quite easily. It's one of the worst matchups, so you know, the nerfs to Dehundur are like actually a buff to Heimerdinger, kind of. So, kind of a weird one. But we'll see how it pans out. I don't really want to complain too much more. I mean, I'm happy the cards are being changed. I'm happy that the Yoink mechanic is fixed, but I do think that they did miss out on a little bit here. That's about it. So decent balance patch. Like, I guess I should say decent patch, bad balance part of it, but you know, the buffs are cool. I think it's nice that they're doing that. But I do think that balance-wise, they did kind of shit the bed. Yeah, I would say that Heimerdinger needed to be balanced a little bit. If I think a little bit harder, there's probably other stuff that had to be changed, like Sejuani, for example, and maybe a little bit more buffs. Again, though, like we talked about this last time, they probably have these buffs and nerfs like mapped out for a little bit, so they're doing this for for this patch, and maybe next patch they already have like a Heimer nerf in mind, for example, right? But overall, I'm happy that they're continuing to, you know, post stuff like this, talk about the nerfs and buffs, and do all those kind of things. So that's about it. Thanks for watching.